You ever hear a word or term that makes your brain want to crawl out of your ears? Like it's so nonsensical and obscene that it kind of just makes you gag a little? That was my reaction to vibe coding, a term meant to describe writing computer code using only an AI chatbot and with little to no actual coding knowledge. I'm not a classically trained computer scientist, but I do have enough programming experience to know that vibe coding is how you vibe find your way to some really bad situations like, I don't know, nuclear meltdown. I want to talk about why vibe coding is so bad, and I also want to talk about how the hype around vibe coding fits into the absolute flop that was OpenAI's GPT-5 release. Last, I want to talk about why I'm weirdly happy that this is happening. What made me absolutely despise vibe coding when I first heard it was that its underlying definition was some kind of unholy matrimony between two really vague concepts, so-called artificial intelligence and the cringe overused word vibe. I might not be the first person who says this to you, yet it doesn't get said enough. Large language models like ChatGPT are not artificial intelligence, and they never will be. The reason why we call chatbots AI is because the area of research that they belong to in computer science is referred to as AI. Within that area of research is machine learning, which is what large language models are built with. True artificial intelligence is as the name implies. It is something that is man-made that is also capable of true intelligence and learning. LLMs do not learn, they do not reason, and they are not capable of actual thought. Even the most cutting-edge models like GPT-5 are incapable of these things. Instead of being truly intelligent, LLMs and other generative models are algorithms that are really good at pattern recognition, such as what words are probabilistically likely to appear in a certain order or whether a picture contains a penguin or not. The reason why LLMs in particular appear so smart is because they portray fluency in human languages, and we are psychologically prone to think that anything that seems like it is talking is smart. But that's the thing, it's not even actually talking. LLMs are best thought of as fancy autocomplete, or maybe like a magic 8-ball that's pretty good at giving you the answer you want most of the time. Because LLMs aren't intelligent and can't learn, they are prone to hallucination, which is when they just make crap up and tell you that it's real. They can't discern between fact and fiction because those concepts have no meaning to them. All they know is the patterns from the data that they are trained on, and remember that to them, the data is just a bunch of numbers. It has no meaning. The data can also be faked, intentionally poisoned, or biased, and LLMs will happily spit out whatever garbage based on it and tell you that it's the word of God. In case you want more information on how LLMs aren't AI from someone who's way smarter than me, another YouTuber, astrophysicist Angela Collier, has a video that I recommend. This brings me back to the coding part of vibe coding. This is the part of the term that explicitly denotes that people who are vibe coding have little to no knowledge of coding, or at least they're doing their best to avoid using any of that expertise. Instead, they vibe their way through the code with prompting, copying, and pasting until something appears to work. There are 3, but really just 2 ways that this can go. One way is that you try to vibe code something and it just doesn't work. It doesn't even look like it's working, it's just completely broken. You might think that this is the worst outcome, but it's not, because at least you know for certain that it's broken. A second outcome is that you vibe code something and it does something. Maybe it merely looks like it's doing something, maybe it's actually doing what you asked it to, maybe it's just breaking a bunch of stuff and deleting a bunch of data elsewhere and making your computer vulnerable to a cyber attack. This outcome is what I call slopware. The point is you can't really be sure what it does because you have no understanding of what your code is actually doing. This is a chaotic outcome that is going to happen a lot by nature of what vibe coding is. Then there's the last outcome, which is going to happen almost never. You vibe code something and without a shadow of a doubt, it is indeed doing what it is intended to do and nothing else. This might happen with really simple things like building basic functions in Excel, for example. We're talking so simple that a lot of people would argue that it's not actually coding, it's just helping you use your computer a little better. Anything more complex than this, and it's almost always going to be the slopware outcome if it does something, but who knows exactly what or what the consequences are. There are already so many real-world examples of both experienced programmers and coding newbies struggling with vibe coding. Perhaps the most notorious recent story was of a senior figure at a startup funding company. This person was using an AI agent by Replit, an AI coding company, to vibe code an app. 4 days in, the AI agent started overwriting the app without permission to fix perceived bugs. It also systemically hallucinated false information, including by generating fake reports and entering made-up people into a database. Beginning a disturbing pattern of deception, it created a parallel fake algorithm to make it appear functional. It even went so far as to erroneously delete an entire database, later trying to hide that it had done so and lying to the human about it. Another example of vibe coding going awry is that Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter and an experienced programmer, has built a couple apps using only vibe coding, but one of his apps was found to have some serious security flaws in it. These examples are good because not only do they show the dangers of vibe coding, they also show the dangers of using LLM chatbots. Coding isn't just about throwing letters, numbers, and symbols into a script, hitting run, and then being happy if it doesn't immediately throw an error. It's also about cybersecurity and data integrity. You have to make sure that whatever app you're building won't randomly corrupt the device that it's running on or make it vulnerable to a cyber attack. You need to have clean, secure code that can be audited and inspected by somebody else. You need to make sure that whatever you're coding follows laws and regulations. If you don't do all these things, you risk having to later pay thousands, maybe millions of dollars in lawyers' fees, damages from lawsuits, and IT cleanup. LLMs have several inherent flaws. These include hallucination, having a limited attention span, and being unable to tell real information from false information, such as real code versus made-up code. These flaws mean that vibe coding will always have the risks that I just outlined. For what it's worth, these issues with LLMs exist with other disciplines too, whether it's trying to fix a toilet, trying to diagnose a medical condition, or writing a novel. This is why I don't trust LLM chatbots and never use them for anything. The reason why I'm so concerned about vibe coding in particular is because of the high-stakes nature of computer coding. There's a reason why I titled this video Vibe Coding to Chernobyl. What happens if we update the software at a nuclear power plant with AI-written slopware and all of a sudden a nuclear reactor explodes? Nuclear meltdown is, of course, an extreme example of what could happen with vibe coding. Even so, there are many places where computer programs dictate the basic well-being and safety of humans that we take for granted. These are things like the programs that decide traffic light changes, the software that contains your medical data at the doctor's office, or programs that help pilots fly planes. Less high-stakes software matters too. Did you know that some of the most common ways that hackers can get into your computer is through flaws in routine software like Microsoft Office or Spotify? Yeah, we already have lots of issues with hacks and leaks now, but imagine how bad it would be if just 10% of all software were vibe coded. What's really disturbing about this whole thing is that we already know all this. There are plenty of cybersecurity experts and computer scientists warning us that vibe coding is dangerous. They also explicitly warn that by laying off actual developers and instead relying on vibe coding, we'll create a shortage of developers who know how to fix the problems that vibe coding creates. What's absolutely bonkers to me is that the finance bros and tech oligarchs keep doubling down on vibe coding despite these warnings. It's not like people dying because of faulty software is just a morally bad thing, though I would hope that that would be enough. People dying is very expensive for tech companies who get sued for stuff like this, and by the way, many AI and tech companies are already facing legal pressure from allegations that their software led to fatalities. Nevertheless, led by AI vibe coding mania, we seem to be sleepwalking to this Chernobyl risking situation. This is where the release of GPT-5 comes in. I'm focusing on OpenAI not just because it's the most popular AI company in terms of number of weekly active users, but specifically because of how vibe coding mania so strongly dictated the direction that OpenAI took GPT-5 in. In case you're not familiar, GPT-5 is the latest version of OpenAI's ChatGPT models that just came out. A lot of the hype leading up to and including the livestream release of GPT-5 honed in on the model's coding abilities. Indeed, one of the biggest marketing slogans of the release was a phrase that Sam Altman pushed hard: software on demand. There's a whole ecosystem of journalists and influencers that hype OpenAI and all of its product launches, and a bunch of these entities couldn't shut up about how great GPT-5 was at coding. Just like vibe coding, the entire release of GPT-5 was insanely vibe-washed. Alongside software on demand, another marketing slogan that was heavily pushed about GPT-5 came from an OpenAI product lead who said that the vibes of this model are really good. Again, cringe, ew, why? What does that even mean? You are selling your software to corporations and schools and governments based on vibes? What is happening? Why do we listen to these unhinged people who try to sell us vibes instead of functional products with real-world applications and specifications that are actually accurate? Can you imagine any other industry selling itself this way? The vibes of this surgeon are really good. The vibes of this plumber are really good. Have we lost our minds? Diatribes aside, the release of GPT-5 was notable because of how poorly it was received despite all of the vibe code marketing. This was the first time that OpenAI had a product launch that was considered to be a flop, and it caused quite the earthquake in the so-called AI industry. There were a couple reasons for this. The livestream had some issues, notably the chart crimes that OpenAI committed in an attempt to show off how GPT-5 fared against AI benchmarks. It was so bad that several sources I saw referred to the whole chart fiasco as vibe graphing or something similar, presumably because it was GPT-5 that was used to make those exact charts. The real criticism about GPT-5 was about the model itself, though. Because of the leaps made by GPT-3 and 4, many people expected GPT-5 to be something very close to or actual artificial general intelligence, or AGI. This is artificial intelligence that can meet or surpass human intelligence. I personally did not expect this because LLMs are not artificial intelligence. They are not intelligent, and they will never reach AGI, not that this is something that we should be working toward. But many people did expect it, largely because both OpenAI and Sam Altman pushed it so hard. Before its release, it was billed as the best ever LLM, and like GPT-4 before it, it would amaze people with how smart it was. But in reality, it wasn't noticeably better than GPT-4, save for in certain areas and at certain tasks. One of the areas where GPT-5 actually received a good amount of praise was specifically coding. To be clear, the more I dug into this issue, the more I saw that there was significant criticism of GPT-5's coding abilities. Regardless, OpenAI's investment into building GPT-5 into some kind of vibe coding platform that could compete with Anthropic's Claude seems to have paid off. Just look at all the headlines and news clips talking about GPT-5 and vibe coding. My concern here is, in spite of GPT-5's flop and the general growing pessimism towards LLMs as a result, OpenAI did succeed in selling the concept of vibe coding with GPT-5. It's taken as axiom that if there's one thing that LLMs could lead to productivity gains in and make a whole lot easier, it's coding. That assumption is wrong, by the way, as a recent Blockbuster study showed that coding with LLMs actually makes you significantly slower. People believe the axiom just the same though, and there is a lot of support for vibe coding, understandably, because coding is hard. I think that OpenAI is aware of this too. One Substack post on this topic that I liked a lot was written by Brian Merchant, a well-known tech journalist. His post was titled "GPT-5 is a joke. Will it matter?" And one of its main conclusions was that despite its issues, GPT-5 was working its way into enterprise use. This is when companies adopt commercial level licenses for software, like how they do with Microsoft Office, Google Workspace, or whatever else. There are a couple lines of this post that I thought were worth reading here. The company, OpenAI, issued 3 announcements on launch day, one introducing the model, another offering an intro to GPT-5 developers, and a third announcing a new era of work. He then goes on to quote an OpenAI press release that I will spare you from, and then another push for enterprise AI, in other words. It's no coincidence, I think, that this press release coincides with Altman's PhD level intelligence language, which is ultimately designed to persuade corporate clients that OpenAI systems can automate skilled, educated, and creative work en masse. Brian Merchant didn't explicitly mention vibe coding, yet it is the most obvious form of automation that has been threatened by AI companies. Back in March of this year, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, said that he thought that within 12 months, most of the world's code would be written by AI. A lot of Amodei's silly predictions and scare tactics marketing have proven false, but that doesn't mean that he and other tech CEOs won't try to sell vibe coding as hard as they can, especially at the enterprise level. Other reporting corroborates this. Amidst the media frenzy about GPT-5's flop, CNBC published a really telling article describing OpenAI's path forward. This piece was titled "GPT-5's rollout fell flat for consumers, but the AI model is gaining where it matters most." The subtitle bullet points, the first things you see after you read the title, were: OpenAI's GPT-5 has more than doubled coding and agent building activity since its debut, and driven an 8-fold jump in reasoning workloads. Platforms including Cursor, Vercel, JetBrains, Factory, Codo, and GitHub Copilot are rolling GPT-5 into certain default artificial intelligence workflows or public previews. OpenAI aims to convert early developer momentum into sustained enterprise AI adoption. That's a lot of laying the ground for systemic vibe coding. The article also notes that GPT-5 wasn't about the consumer, but about enterprise-level business. OpenAI reportedly now has over 500 people working on their enterprise sales team. It seems like a key goal is overtaking Anthropic, which has been this year's most popular company for AI coding up until this point. Another telling and all the more frightening article I read reported just one day before GPT-5's release that OpenAI was planning on selling licenses to its ChatGPT enterprise product to the US government for exactly $1 through the next year. The article explicitly said that OpenAI had been working to deepen its relations with lawmakers and regulators. My hypothesis is that they're employing the free trial model, wherein you get your customers hooked to a product at low or no cost, and then later they'll pay a ton of money for it. My specific fear with the US government and OpenAI is that ChatGPT Enterprise or whatever will get so integrated into government processes that when that $1 trial is up, stuff will just start breaking unless Uncle Sam decides to turn on that taxpayer dollar faucet. And if you add together the trajectory of OpenAI's enterprise push, its vibe coding mania, and its cozying up to the government, you get a really bad combination. Then you really do run the risk of a slopware-induced Chernobyl or a vibe-coded nuclear war. The US government and governments in general have control over some of the most high-stakes functions in our society. In the face of this bleak outlook, I'm actually kind of happy that this is all happening. That's not because I actually want slopware-induced Chernobyl to happen or for us all to live in radioactive soup. It's because for so long, the AI industry has gone completely unchecked. At last, the latest industry BS like vibe coding or GPT-5 shows just how silly, hollow, and frankly evil these companies are. These companies and their CEOs aren't tech geniuses or would-be physics wizards. They're salesmen, and unfortunately for everyday people who are just trying to get by without getting ripped off, they're really good at selling snake oil products. As I mentioned before though, the release of GPT-5 led to the first widespread reckoning of the flaws and limits of generative models that we have ever seen. The first crack in the seemingly impenetrable armor of the take me to the moon daddy AI mania economy has been made. In addition to helping people see why vibe coding is dangerous, I hope this whole episode helps the world to see why LLMs are dangerous. They drain whole towns of power and water, their data annotation economy is exploitative and abusive, they steal the creative works of untold numbers of artists and writers, and they lead people to psychotic delusion. In its largely unregulated state, the do-everything LLM chatbot is a technology that shouldn't exist. If more people realize this, then we might be able to do something about it, like force local, state, and federal governments to actually regulate this incredibly reckless and profit-crazed industry. If you're feeling spooked by all this, I want you to know that there are a few things that you can do to help. Next time AI comes up in a conversation or someone says something like, love it or hate it, AI is just going to take all our jobs, push back on that, even just a little bit. A weirdly large number of my friends have told me that I'm the first person that they have encountered that has meaningfully challenged techno-fatalism in their lives. You could write to your lawmakers about AI regulation, or you could try to get your workplace to create an AI policy that puts limits on chatbot use. This is especially true if you work in any industry adjacent to tech and you start to hear people hype vibe coding. No sane company would ever allow their software devs to vibe code. Lastly, try not to use AI chatbots or AI summaries for pretty much anything. I don't, and I'm still alive. The AI FOMO is just silly marketing. Don't give these companies an inch, or they'll take the whole world. If you have other ideas for pushing back against vibe coding, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. My little potato.